All right, we are now joined by a very special guest this week. It is a man that I talk to every Saturday on the Notre Dame Football Radio Network broadcast. It's the voice of Notre Dame football in his sixth year, Paul Burmeister. Paul, I really appreciate you taking the time today. You're a busy man, so thank you for making some time for Wake Up the Echoes this week.
Tony, this is really nice to be able to look down and see you, because when I'm in the press box, I mean, I can't see you anywhere. I just hear you with the headphones on Saturdays, as you mentioned when we chat. So this is a nice change to be in my own house and to be able to look down and see you.
I was going to say, too, I think over the next 15 or 20 minutes, we're going to have a chance to, frankly, interact even more than we do. Usually I'm teeing you up for you and Ryan to preview the game, and then you're throwing it back to me for the studio updates. So a chance to talk a little bit more dynamically about Notre Dame football, one of my favorite topics. I know one of your favorite topics. Picked a great week, 58-7, 9 games in now. They feel like they are kind of figuring out what they are as a team. What are your impressions? You see them every week. Where do you think this team stands after 9 games?
I think the record is a pretty good indication. This is a team that is really, really, really good, and just this close to being in that top 5 and in that conversation to be one of the teams that plays deep into January. I mean, they had their chances to be right there. Most teams can't say that, but 2 losses is disappointing on one hand. On the other hand, there are probably about 90% of the teams or more that would love to have that problem of being that close to being in the national championship conversation. So I think 2-loss team, that's a pretty good representative of a very good Notre Dame team that we see right now.
Obviously, defense was the story this past week. They've been taking the ball away a ton. I think it's 10 takeaways in the last 2 weeks. I want to focus on offense, though. I feel like they're also kind of slowly finding their identity. I think they had 4 pass catchers with 50 or more yards. That's more of what we expected to see from Sam Hartman. You obviously played the position, which I want to get into a little bit more later. What have you seen from Sam Hartman in this offense over the last couple games that give you encouragement going into the final 3?
I think I'm going to back up a little bit to my very first impression of seeing Sam in a Notre Dame uniform. And it was sometime early to mid-August. I came out to South Bend and spent a day watching camp. And I was so excited to see him because, as you mentioned, I played the position many, many years ago. So I always kind of see things through that quarterback lens. And I wanted to watch a bunch of different positions, Tony, but I ended up watching Sam most of that afternoon that I was there. And what stood out to me was how much this is a quarterback who wants to hang in the pocket, maybe make 1 or 2 guys miss, not with like big moves or sprinting one way or the other, just kind of slight, subtle little veteran savvy moves in the pocket. And he doesn't want to like wow you with the fastball downfield or throw it 65 yards downfield. What he really wants to do is use his instincts and feel and touch to find someone 20 to 25 yards down the field on what I call a daring throw, not a throw that is that's an error or that's like, you know what, that's a poor decision, but he likes to hang and he likes to try and fit one in. And I see that all the time on Saturday. And sometimes guys like that throw interceptions, and we saw a couple of picks on Saturday. But most of the time, that quality, that signature move of his, little move in the pocket, touch pass down the field, it usually works out with Notre Dame fans cheering and me making a big call that I'm excited about. So I noticed that in August, that he wants to make daring throws with his touch and his feel, and I love seeing that on Saturday.
It's funny that you talk about not being able to look away from the position that you played. I talked to Marcus Freeman just an hour ago, and we had J.D. Bertrand here, and they agreed that he can look at the whole field, and in the end, he comes right back to linebacker, and he's always on the linebackers first. And it actually leads me to a question about the job you have now. You played quarterback in the Big Ten, back for Iowa in the 90s, and now you call the game. I listened to you call the game, and one of the things I'm going to point this out, that those who listen, they might notice this, those who don't should. When you're calling the game, I actually hear you point out the routes that are run more than the average play-by-play. And I think that's your quarterback experience coming through. How do you think being a quarterback at this level helped you transition into this job of calling Notre Dame games on the radio?
I think, first of all, Tony, I appreciate that observation that you point that out because I do like to be something beyond just someone who studied this and wasn't lucky enough to play it. I would hope that the fact that I was around it a lot playing shows up every now and then. So thank you for pointing that out. I think, first of all, playing quarterback helped me way back when. I'm going to go back to when I first started at NFL Network, and I wasn't ready to be at that level. I was lucky enough to get thrown out there and have that opportunity, but I worked with a couple of guys named Sterling Sharp and Solomon Wilcots. And I think Sterling and Solomon gave me the benefit of the doubt that first season while I was kind of trying to find my footing on that level. They're like, this is a guy that played. He didn't play at the same level we played in the NFL for a long time, but he's a former Big Ten quarterback. We're going to start out liking him because of that and see if he can catch up. So I think my football background has helped me a number of times when I haven't done my job as well as I've wanted to, especially in the past. But analysts will start out, as I said, giving me that benefit of the doubt because they know I used to play. As for what I'm doing now with the play-by-play, I'm so used to looking out at a defense and not just looking at the ball, but looking out and kind of seeing all 22 people. And I can't always lean on that because I need to give the listener, I was going to say viewer, I need to give the listener what he or she or what I think they are listening for. But I can zoom out of that a little bit and see the entire field, just like I used to, see what the defense is doing. And I think it helps with quick recognition. And you know very well, during the week, you want to study the names and numbers and have them down so well. So when you see something, it comes out really quickly. And I think the combination of prep, which I usually feel pretty good about, with my football background, I would hope it allows the listener to hear things in time when they're supposed to hear them because I'm recognizing what's happening on the field.
Yeah, I when I listen, I hear 9-yard in route, I hear seam route. I don't hear that from a lot of play-by-plays, and it's super useful when you're listening to the game. I want to dig into your career a little bit more. You mentioned NFL Network. You, of course, worked now at NBC for, I think, close to a decade. You're doing the Notre Dame games on the radio, doing more play-by-play. Take me back, though, to when you started, I guess maybe came out of college or whenever that fire started to burn that you wanted to get into broadcasting. How did you know you wanted to be in this line of work? And then what steps did you take to ultimately get that break at NFL Network that you alluded to earlier?
So I was kind of wandering in my 20s, Tony. I was a decent quarterback, as we talked about at Iowa, decent enough to have a chance to play in the NFL. I was with the Vikings as a free agent for a few months, but I wasn't good enough to make a career out of it. So here I am in my mid-20s, and I didn't really have a backup plan, which now as a parent, I try to make sure that my sons have a little more of a backup plan than the old man did, because I was 24, 25, 26, really trying to find something that I really wanted to do that lit that fire, like you said, the way playing sports always did my whole life. And I was lucky enough, just because I played quarterback at Iowa and I had relationships around some of the local news departments, to get a chance at the ABC in Eastern Iowa. KCRG allowed me the chance to kind of learn the business and not just be on the air, but how to run the camera, how to cut the video, how to produce a sportscast, how to write it, how to plan out in between the 6 and the 10. What are you going to shoot? What are you not going to shoot? So I really learned how to be a local sportscaster. I don't want to say by accident, because people gave me nice opportunities and I had to work at them, but I never had a class in college. I never thought about it right after college. Boy, broadcasting something I want to do. I was around home looking for that something that made me want to work hard at it. And I was fortunate enough to find it in broadcasting. And Tony, you know this because you've done it at a high level too. The second that red light went on for the first time, and I was on live TV, even though there weren't too many people watching back in Eastern Iowa on whatever evening that was, I felt nervous. I felt excited. I wanted to do really well. When I was done, I thought about what I did and didn't do. And that feeling definitely correlated to being an athlete and playing quarterback. There was a rush, there were nerves, there was excitement, and there was evaluation when I was done. You knew right away if it was good or not good. And I think that feeling, I think I recognized that inside myself. And that, because I played quarterback, led me to keep trying to be good at it. And here we are now, I guess 20 or 25 years later.
Such a unique path. It's great to hear. I want to ask about the 6 years now in this specific role, and then we'll broaden out and talk about some of your other football assignments coming up these next 2 weeks. But Notre Dame, football on the radio. Obviously, NBC's had a long partnership with Notre Dame, so when the opportunity came up and you had a chance to be the football radio voice, what excited you about the job? And then what have you maybe learned in your 6 years about football radio, play-by-play, Notre Dame, and just what has the experience been like to be around this team now for obviously 2 CFP runs and some really good football along the way as well?
It's just been really, really fun, Tony. And I wish I had some kind of sophisticated, nuanced word or a descriptor beyond fun, but it is really, it's fun. And when you think about sports on TV or sports on the radio, and you're not in the business, of course, it looks like fun all the time. There are certain opportunities that aren't as much fun as they look like. And when you're lucky enough to get one that getting ready for it feels good. There's an excitement and there's an anticipation that's not just all nerves and angst, but it's really excitement for what's coming in that day when you're on the air. And then when you're doing it, it makes you smile. That's like, okay, I need to hang on to this. And I wasn't doing it very long, Tony, before I realized there's a reason people keep these radio jobs for 30, 40, 50 years because they're really, really fun. It's great to have a connection to a team. If you're lucky enough to have a partner like I am with Ryan Harris, that you really enjoy their company, they're just kind of perfect weekends of talking ball and being on the air. So I'm not sure what your exact specific question was to send me down this road, but here I am just thinking about I feel lucky to have a job in this business that is just fun to do, and I always look forward to coming back.
You mentioned Ryan Harris. He was a guest on this show. I talk to him as well as you every Saturday. What do you like most about working with that guy? He is obviously extremely upbeat. He seems like a blast to work with. What do you enjoy most about spending time with him?
I think first of all, just personally, Tony, once you get into a business that you are, or a profession that you're really serious about, and you like, I've been married for a long time, I've had kids for a long time, like those things, job, marriage, being a parent, they take up all my time, and they've taken up my time in a great way. I mean, those are three wonderful parts of life. When I'm getting at, you don't have many chances as an adult to really make friends that are a lot of fun, that you really connect with, that you get to spend time with, because life doesn't present you those opportunities, either being a partner, being a dad, or trying to be good at your job. And there's not much room for anything else. Ryan's somebody who is, he's become a wonderful friend. We spent a lot of time together. We have a lot of laughs together. So I think it starts there, that this is the rare opportunity as an adult, as a parent, as a professional, that I've made a true friend that I enjoy spending time with. So I think that's number one. Professionally, two things really stand out with Ryan that I appreciate and understand and kind of recognize all the time. Number one, he's got something to say after every play, and that comes with the job requirement. A lot of people don't think much about that, but it's not automatic, no matter what sport you're doing, that you're going to have a partner that has an observation to share the entire time. Think about it. That's over 100 observations per event, per game. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
Ryan will see something, whether you agree with him or not. He'll see something that sparks a thought and shares it. It's great. That's wonderful for me as a friend and as a pro. I see that and I love that. Number two, he's made me better at this because he's got such a fun personality that he's reminded me, and you'll understand this, Tony, in radio, for the play-by-play guy, there's not as much time to interact with your partner because there's so much description. Mm-hmm. On TV, I'm just captioning what happened, and it's easy to interact with my analyst. On radio, I'm explaining, I'm talking, I'm saying what happened and where the ball was, and there's just not that much time to hang out with the person you're there with. Ryan is so good at that part, and if I didn't pay attention to what he was saying, and if I didn't interact with him or make a point to interact with him, in addition to trying to articulate what's happening on the field, I'd be doing the audience a disservice because I wouldn't be getting the most out of my guy who's really, really entertaining and fun. So he has pushed me to be not just a fair and accurate play-by-play person on the radio, but someone who's interacting with a fun, bubbly dude, because I think the audience appreciates that. And he has really made me think about that and try to be good at that on the radio too.
Yeah, his energy is certainly infectious, whether you're working with him directly or even across the phone line like I am.
Right.
Let's talk about another Notre Dame guy that's an analyst that you're going to be working with next couple weeks. You're going to be on a couple of Peacock assignments with NBC doing Big Ten football. Kyle Rudolph, a guy I actually had a chance to work with on the spring game last year. I think he worked with him maybe USFL as well. Yeah. So he's kind of cutting his teeth now in this industry. I would never suggest, I think the game's at a different time as the Notre Dame game. So for Notre Dame fans, take in your Notre Dame game on TV or the radio and then jump over to watch Paul and Kyle next week. Where are you guys going to be? And then what's the experience been like working with or getting ready to work with Kyle to try to put him in a position to succeed, obviously, in his first tour of duty here?
I think that's a great shout out because I believe right when Notre Dame is over, right when you go off the air, I think Iowa Northwestern comes on at the exact same time. So I mean, that could be a pretty good way for people to spend their Saturday. But it's the Hawkeyes and the Wildcats. It's pretty cool, Tony. It's going to be played at Wrigley Field. And that is, I think it's going to be a challenge logistically to set up. And I don't know how the teams feel about playing there, but I grew up in Iowa City, Iowa. My dad, because of radio, he grew up on a farm that the one sporting event they could get Cubs baseball. So he was a diehard Cubs fan. Every summer, he would drive me and my sisters to Wrigley Field. Fantastic memories. So when I got asked by my boss at NBC to call a football game at Wrigley Field, I mean, I raised both hands and said, that's pretty cool for me. So number one, personally, it's going to be special for me. But as for Kyle, as you mentioned, I had a chance to work with him in the USFL, and you saw this as well when you worked with him. He's easy company. He's a good guy. This is something he really wants to be good at. He's nice to everybody. And those are, again, you may not think about those things as special or extra, but when you work in this business, you don't always get someone who checks all those boxes. A lot of people who are fresh off the field, they're stunned by how much work it is, by how difficult it is to be that quick in the moment with all that pressure. And it's not really something that they want to do eventually. And you can feel that when you're working next to him. When I was with Kyle, he brought preparation, he brought a smile and some energy, and it's just something that I know he wants to do. So he's new at it. And when we're all new at it, there are plenty of things to think about it that you want to get better at. But to me, he starts with a commitment to this business. His preparation is good, and he's fun to hang out with. So pretty good place to start. We'll see where it goes the next couple of weeks.
All right, I'll be looking forward to watching that when I'm done with the game down in Clemson, catching you guys on the car ride back. Last one I've got before we take our break, before our From the Irish question, is about your son. Mm-hmm. Ben, I believe, is committed to play lacrosse here. He'd come in next season. So obviously, I think this announced, last year. Congratulations. That's such a neat accomplishment for him. What excites you about the prospect of being a Notre Dame dad, and just how thrilled are you that your son's going to be in South Bend going forward the next few years?
Yeah, I'm mostly, Tony, and first of all, thank you for bringing it up. It's a pretty cool topic for me to discuss, but I'm mostly just happy that he found what he was looking for. And for all of us parents, when your kid gets to the point when they're thinking about college, it's a giant, big old kind of scary world to think about and consider. And you start to think back about all the positives and negatives that can happen in a college experience. You just want them to find a place that feels good to them. So I'm super excited that he found that place, both academically and athletically, at a wonderful spot like Notre Dame. And as it kind of came down the home stretch last fall, and Notre Dame was in the final 2, 3, 4 schools that he was going to pick from, I felt myself all at once being very excited about the prospect of coming to work in South Bend and having my son there and getting to take him out to dinner and getting to meet his friends and those kind of things. And at the same time, Tony, I pulled back and I'm like, you cannot put any of that on him, because he needs to make a choice where he wants to be based off of where he wants to be, not because dad's going to be excited. So I tried to stay in the background and just say, buddy, wherever you want to go is awesome. High five. Mom and I will support you. And when he said he was going to Notre Dame, obviously I started to think about, man, oh man, 7 weekends in the fall, I'm going to come to South Bend and get to spend that time with him. So I feel extremely lucky that program and academically Notre Dame is that good and my son gets to be there. And just the giant bonus is the extra time that I'm going to get to spend with him.
Well, I'm sure that'll be fun in the fall. Also, you get a chance to come back and check them out in the spring, too, when they're playing, which will be great as well. Let's take a quick break, Paul, and we'll come back with our From the Irish question. All right, it's time now for our From the Irish question, presented by TireRack.com. Still here with Paul Burmeister. Paul, it's a question that I think a lot of people are interested in. It's timely because of what you have coming up this weekend at Wrigley, and then, of course, your duties throughout the year as the radio voice. It comes from Andrew from Aleta, Ohio. He says, what makes calling a game on the radio different from calling it on TV?
I think it's a great question. It's one to think about all the time. I mean, 6 seasons in, Tony, there are enough differences. I think about it to remind myself every single time I go on the air, because it is so much different. Mike Tirico said it to me best. I was lucky enough when I got the job, I didn't really have any radio experience. I talked to a number of people who I knew had kind of toggled between TV and radio, either all the time or at some point in their career. Ian Eagle was a wonderful help. Mike Tirico, of course, was a great help. And Mike's like, Paul, you got to keep in mind when you're on the radio, that story time that you're used to on TV in between plays where you can get into a story, that's description time. It's not time for a story. It's not time for a connecting anecdote. It's time to say he spun out of that tackle. He put his right hand down. He went to the left. there's so much description that has to be done. You have to get out of, or I have to get out what I'm so used to on TV. And that's a little bit of story connector and turn that into description time. So that's number one, which leads into number two, which is on TV, the pictures, the analyst, the producer, the game, that takes front and center stage. And I want to be in the background, kind of connecting dots, making sense of it, captioning all the play that I see, but let everything else take center stage. On the radio, and you know this as a play-by-play person, it is mostly you. And that's not my normal personality on the air. I had to teach myself that it's okay that I'm talking more than Ryan. The audience expects that and needs that based off of job roles. So I think story time becoming description time and just getting okay with talking so much more than I do on TV are the two biggest things.
That's two great notes. I think that anybody listening, trying to get into broadcasting, can definitely put to practice. And it's great to hear you echo those. Paul Burmeister, I can't thank you enough for doing this. Always great to talk to you. Glad we got to interact more than our normal exchanges. I'm looking forward to watching you at Wrigley. That does sound, especially after what you mentioned about your dad, like an awesome opportunity, not just to call your alma mater, but be in a special place. So we'll make sure to watch you after we take in the Notre Dame game at noon this weekend, and then we'll hear you on the radio a couple weeks later calling the game again.
Our days are switched, Tony, because I will listen to you before I go on the air on Saturday at Wrigley, and then you can take the headset off and hopefully check out Iowa Northwestern. So have a good one on Saturday. I know you will, and thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Paul. That does it for this week's edition of Wake Up the Echoes.